Bitcoin relates to every aspect of life in some way, because like money is touches all aspects in life, and all money is a form of human energy. It's like stored human energy that you can transfer and hang on to. Yeah, exactly. And Bitcoin is just a more moral monetary system. Like there's a reason Bitcoiners still hang on to this thing, even after a 40%, drop or whatever, is because humanity has been stuck with this elite class of people that has access to the money printer and can buy whatever they want. And, so we're opting out.
Welcome to Bitcoin Basics with your hosts, Faris and Gordon. Visit bitcoinbasics.help if you need help buying and securing your Bitcoin.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bitcoin Basics podcast. It is Faris today, flying solo. Gordon, unfortunately, was a bit ill and had a sore throat, so he was unable to join myself and Andrew Howard, who I'll introduce in a second. The price of Bitcoin is $39,400. The block height is, let me find it, where are we here? 726,762, and it is the 11th of March. So we have interviewed Andrew Howard in the past from Bitcoin Reserve, and it was a real pleasure to have him on the show again. The reason we did was he talked about leaving Mexico, where he's been living for some time, and promoting life in Mexico, and he's going back to the U.S. He did get a lot of messages as to why he's doing so we wanted to catch up with him about that. He is also an ambassador for free private cities, and that's something we talked as well. So this is not so much a Bitcoin Basics show. This is something where we went into a lot of politics and society and the world that we are living in at the moment. I am usually very reserved when it comes to my opinions, my political persuasions, and my personal stories. I let my hat off for this one. And so feel free to criticize, condemn, encourage, and thank you for tuning in, everyone.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, and share so we can find others like yourself.
It is a pleasure to have Andrew Howard back. We had Andrew with us last year. Andrew, we said on the podcast we're going to have you back when Bitcoin hits 100K. That obviously has not happened yet, guys, but you were when I say in the news, you're in FinTwit news because last time we chatted, you were in Mexico City, and you were very keen on Mexico City. You're talking about Bitcoin citadels, and now you're leaving. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I've been in many different parts of the country, but my kind of main area is Puerto Vallarta in Mexico. But I've had an evolution of perspective since living outside of the United States for the past 2 years. I'm still going to be in Mexico for probably about 7-ish more months, just finalizing things before I go up to the United States. But my long-term plan is to, go back to the United States, and we can definitely get into why. I still, I want to preface it with, I think depending on who you are, Mexico is still a great option. Particularly if you are an unvaccinated person, an unvaccinated foreigner who can't go to the United States. And because as a while back, the United States said that if you are not, vaccinated, you can't travel in the country, which is pretty insane. And so, under that circumstance, if you're like a European or Canadian or Australian or whatever, by all means, vote with your feet and go to a place that's a lot more relaxed and is going to care about your freedom. And I think Mexico still has a lot of great things to offer. But personally, as somebody from the United States, there are a lot of reasons why I think you should be bullish in some ways in the United States, depending on the area.
Yeah, I know. I do want to ask you why you're moving back, but I have seen there's been outflows of people from New York and from California, specifically going to Florida and Texas, where they have much more open laws as far as freedom of movement, freedom of gathering. Yeah, I was really keen to get to the Bitcoin conference, but I don't like the term unvaxxed because I grew up in North Africa, so I've been vaxxed against a whole lot of things. On medical advice, I chose not to get the Pfizer vaccine, and to basically, if I do get this thing, then to combat it naturally using my natural immune system, which is very healthy and which I take vitamins for. But as you say, I couldn't go to America. And if I want to come back to New Zealand, where I'm a resident, I would have to stay in isolation for 2 weeks. So it makes overseas travel just impossible right now. It's my personal dilemma. But yeah, so why are you moving back to the US?
Yeah, and good on you for trusting the immune system that we all have, that everybody has seemed to have forgotten about. So yeah, good on you for that. Yeah. So why am I going back to the United States? So a multitude of reasons. The one that I'll start off with, which if anybody has heard me on other recent podcasts, I probably sound like a broken record, but like it's such an important thing to keep in mind when it comes to the United States is there is no other country on earth that has this idea of freedom that everybody looks up to, like it's, and even if people don't know what freedom truly is in the way that maybe we would define it as people that are libertarians or, in the Austrian school of thought, like still just to have this societal, sort of reverence to the concept of freedom, there's really something there. And I think that affects a lot of things. What else? I should also say that I think for sure the United States government is waging war on people in the United States. I firmly believe that the U.S. government does not have the interest in mind of U.S. citizens, and I'm not even going to go on a long tangent of why, but it's just absolutely insane what the United States government is doing, especially when it comes to food. I mean, one thing I can talk about in that regard without going on too much of a tangent, because I know the question is, why did I go to the United States? But I guess just seeing, my home country falling apart in some ways, and seeing how the United States government is clearly, they have a propaganda campaign. They're trying to destroy the country. And that's a very tough thing for me to see from an outsider position. I mean, I grew up being very patriotic. I joined the Marine Corps. I was very proud of being an American. And then I got interested in the libertarian school of thought and Austrian economics and all that, and anarcho-capitalism. And, that changed my perspective to basically see borders as arbitrary lines drawn on a map by politicians. And I think that is absolutely the case, right? Like there's no reason there should be this fence in between. I mean, the only real property is private property. I mean, there's no, just because this group of people who calls themselves government draws a line on a map in a certain area and says, we own this area, that doesn't make it legitimate ownership, right? The only real form of ownership is private property. But that being said, just because you don't like the United States government doesn't mean, that's a very different thing from not liking the United States. And when I left Mexico, after having been in the United States military, kind of having a bad taste in my mouth from the governmental perspective, my opinion has kind of changed in that regard too. Yeah. I mean, I think maybe a final point to put a cap on this is Latin America has a lot of very great things to offer these days. And especially when it comes to food security too, in my opinion, which is going to be only more and more important as time goes on. But there is a lot of compliance in Latin America. And
Compliance with food security.
Compliance with the COVID stuff, which is a huge shame. And obviously there's a lot of compliance everywhere, right? But you just don't have, like, people don't care about freedom as much here. Right? The good thing about Mexico is that, you know, it's kind of a cultural thing to just take the path of least resistance, which is beneficial in many ways. But there's not this urge to just say, okay, what the hell is happening? Why are we still wearing masks after 2 years of a virus that has a 99.7 or 8 or 9 whatever % survival rate? Like, what's going on here? You know,
is there maybe a greater fear of authority there? Because I grew up in North Africa, where some of these states are monarchists, and and some of the places where I grew up, you don't question the government so much because you know you can just get arbitrarily arrested and your family never see you again. So is there perhaps a bit more, not reverence, but just simple fear of regimes? Is that what you mean by freedoms there?
That's a good question. You know what? I don't want to act like I know, just because I'm not like, you know, I didn't grow up here or anything like that. So I couldn't really give you like a firm, exact answer. But I mean, I will say that I believe Mexico is one of the most dangerous countries in the world for a journalist to be in. So there's that, right? Like, that's a really, you know, that's a real thing. Journalists here just get taken away and killed by the cartel or by politicians, whatever. I don't know. I mean, I think in many ways, I see it in the United States too. Like, apathy is very popular now, especially for people in my generation, like the younger crowd. Like, for some reason, just not caring about stuff is, you know, like being too passionate is not like a cool thing now, you know?
Oh, it's not just the US. This is global complacency. And I mean, I've witnessed it here in New Zealand. And anyone who considers anything at this stage is automatically an anti-vaxxer and a conspiracy theorist. It's like, well, hang on. No, I'm not anti-vax. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just questioning certain policies, but you're not allowed to do that now.
You know, even that, so I know this is a Bitcoin show, but I don't really care if people think I'm crazy or whatever, but like even just the term anti-vax, all these, it's such a harsh label. But you know, I mean, let's say you don't agree with this medical ideology of having to inject yourself from beginning at like 3 months of old at birth. Like, what is that? Are you just crazy because you don't want to, you know, you have a different view on health? Because I know a shit ton of families who are very healthy, who are freedom-minded, who don't vaccinate their kids, and their kids are the healthiest I've seen out of anybody I know. I mean, they've got, you know, bright eyes, good looking skin, you know, healthy, you know, of course they'll get sick, but like, it's not like they're dying of all these things. I mean, it's like follow the money, right? Like, to think that medical systems being merged with governmental systems, to think there's no way there's going to be any corruption there, like, that's very naive.
So one thing you said I really relate to. I said I was born and raised in North Africa. I didn't go to any English school until I was 16. And that's when I moved to Arizona. And I did the last 2 years of high school in Arizona. So I spent quite a bit of time in America. And I found that people are amongst the most generous, hospitable people in the world, Americans. However, the government living overseas, though, there's the American government policy and there's the American government, which is the people. And I'd agree with you, the American government policies are not favorable to the people. Because when you say freedoms, to me, like what I witnessed living in America is if you're on low income or even middle class, life is quite hard. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what do you need in life? Food, health, and I'd say even education. Those are very expensive. Eating healthy is really expensive. Going to the hospital is incredibly expensive. And yeah, education, these things I see, okay, they're really expensive. Now, a lot of things in America are cheap. Your luxury items are incredibly cheap. Luxury cars, even home ownership is actually cheaper compared to most of the other G20 countries. But I just found, gosh, it's the standard of living I found in North Africa was probably higher than in America. And the funny thing that I found was if you questioned your standard of living in America, then you were seen as unpatriotic. So to me, that was just something I noticed as an outsider looking in. So my senior year of high school in Arizona was the most fun I've ever had. I had so much fun, but just I thought, man, the standard of living here does not look that good, because I knew people who would spend thousands of dollars a month on insurance premiums. What is it? Minimum $50,000 to $100,000 for a university degree. Yeah. So that's not like that in other countries.
And in the United States, you can't even, like, if you go to the hospital and you need something done, they won't tell you how much it costs until after it's done.
Oh, I witnessed that myself. Yeah. I got subscribed pain medication, and this was 20 years ago, and that cost me $2,000. So yeah, anywhere else, that's probably $50 at most. So yeah. So when you say freedom, I just want to narrow down, what are you referring to when you say the freedoms you get in America? What would you get that you wouldn't get in European countries or the antipodes like Australia, New Zealand?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, the big elephant in the room is guns, right? The US is just such a crazy country. It has more guns than people. And I think that is a very large factor in a lot of things. I mean, the Second Amendment was not set up for hunting. It was, and it wasn't even set up primarily for, foreign enemies. It was really for a domestic threat to keep your government in check. I mean, Thomas Jefferson talked about that, and a bunch of founding fathers say that the purpose of the Second Amendment is to ensure that the government is kept in check. And one of my favorite quotes by Jefferson is when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty. And that's something that we have forgotten today in the United States as well. But so that, I would say is probably one of the bigger factors. Second point aside from that is I'm not saying that the United States is a more free country than other areas right now at this point. I mean, I'm going back because I see an extremely unique culture, which I think lucky to have been born in, which I now see the value in since living outside of it for a couple years. And I want to be in that culture. I mean, if we're talking about like quality of life, and if you work online, you're going to have a much better quality of life in Mexico. And I always say, like, with the Citadel stuff, because we're always talking about it, and this is a big concept that I'm really interested in, it just free living, citadels, all that. Like, there's not one right answer for everyone, I don't think, but I also think we're moving into a world where it's going to be very difficult to escape this huge black swarm of tyranny that's encompassing the entire earth. So
one thing I just want to mention here, Andrew. So just if I can summarize this point, tell me if I'm right in interpreting this, is you're seeing what's happening to your country. When I say your country, I mean your people, your American brothers and sisters. Rather than just ignore the problem, live overseas, you're deciding to go back and support your brethren and just be part of improving the country. Is that the drive to go back to US?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen the same thing here in New Zealand. A lot of people go, these policies are insane. Mm-hmm. You know, my 12-year-old can't compete in competitive sports. And we're seeing, the vaccine passport system have a debilitating impact on the mental health of children. Some people are like, do I just get the hell out of here and go to El Salvador? Or do I stay here and fight the system? So I just want to clarify one thing here. You mentioned gun ownership and fear of the government. I'm playing devil's advocate here. Shouldn't we move past the muskets where we fight back with guns, but use the democratic process to fight back?
So multifaceted answer we could have here. Okay, so I think that the war that we're in right now is primarily not a war of physical violence, but more so information and resources as well. Mm-hmm. Like I firmly believe they want to make people as poor as possible.
Yeah.
Like I really do.
Economic servitude. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what better of a way is there to control somebody than to have, take away all their resources? They're going to like physically need you for their survival. And if somebody needs you, then you can do whatever you want with them. Yep. So, yeah. I mean, when I think of like, and aside from that, like 1776, that's not like a pretty thing, right? That's like the least preferred option. I also don't think that I'll say this. I don't think it's as black and white as 1776, right? Or fighting the system with the system through democracy and trying to get a bill passed, whatever. Like I don't think that suing the CDC or suing, I don't have any hope in that system at all. That's why I love Bitcoin so much, is because I just seeing so many things growing up as an American, like all these bullshit wars that my government wants to go in. So many people disagreeing with that. So many people trying to change that through the system. Vaccine stuff, people, saying I'm going to sue this company and whatever. It's none of it's working. And Bitcoin is something that actually works today. Anyways, long story short, to specifically answer your question as far as solutions, what I have in mind, here are the most viable solutions that I see for certain states in the US to be free. Bitcoin, obviously, being one of the biggest. I want to orange pill people, just as we all do. Food is a big one. So in the United States, it's been increasingly difficult for family farms to just be a thing. I mean, I believe since there's a documentary on this called Farmageddon, and it essentially talks about the U.S. government's war on family farms. And in that documentary, they say that since the 1970s, we've had 80% less family farms in the United States. They have, the U.S. government has sent in SWAT teams, like 20 dudes with big guns and vehicles at the middle of the night to go and raid a family farm because they're selling raw milk to people. So, and 90% of the meat supply in the United States, or like 95, something like that, is monopolized by about 4 corporations. So there's very clearly they want to get people dependent on their food system as well. And I don't like that. So I think that, the most effective like protest really is Bitcoin, is having your own food and having community, like having like-minded people near you that you actually, you have relationships with. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And what Orange Pill me into Bitcoin, and sorry for this show is targeted to noobs. So Orange Pill is essentially reference to the Matrix, where you had the two, the green and the red pill, and the orange pills, you're taking the Bitcoin pill. So what orange pill mean to Bitcoin was the economic and societal factors. It took me a while to understand the technology behind it. This is where Gordon comes from. He comes from a tech perspective. But to me, it was looking back at history, most things were centralized. So you mentioned land before. It was actually private land that started the Industrial Revolution and created the middle class. So it was the decentralization of land. When we had the separation of church and state in 1648, Treaty of Westphalia, that is when we decentralized political power. The head of the church was no longer the head of the state. We elected the head of the state. So we're starting to see decentralization of things. And to me, we're not decentralizing finance. So the Bretton Woods Institution has done more harm than good. The euro petrodollar system has done more harm than good. What we've seen in this pandemic is the ultra rich have become more ultra rich, and the ultra poor become more ultra poor, and we are decimating the middle class. And Robert Reich did a documentary about, and this is 10 years old, I think, where he was saying we're going to have serious societal issues because we're killing the middle class. And this to me was, okay, so Bitcoin is a decentralized alternative. And where's, like I mentioned before, kids that can't participate in sports here because they're unvaccinated. So what we're seeing now is a group that's basically saying, well, we're going to start our own sports program and anyone can participate. Here as well in New Zealand. So I'm rambling a bit here, guys, but I'm leaning to a question. You are not allowed to go to cafes, restaurants if you don't have a vaccine pass. This applies to 13-year-olds as well. You can't sit down for a hamburger or a cup of coffee if you don't have the vaccine pass on your phone. So there's a guy who owns private land and he just set up a free market. And 1,000 people come together without a mask, without social distancing. And it's just food trucks and markets. And ironically, it has not led to a mass COVID outbreak that everyone feared. So we're starting to see, okay, I disagree with this. So I am running a parallel alternative. So to me, this is something I'm starting to notice. We are seeing parallel alternatives to the system. Bitcoin was the first with finance. Now with these COVID regulations, we're seeing freedom of movement as an alternative to what the central authority is telling me to do. Now, this is where I kind of want to segue into the Free Private Cities Foundation, which you're an ambassador of. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah. So first of all, my affiliation with Free Private Cities, I just am somebody who's very fascinated with the idea and wants to spread it with other people. So I'm an ambassador. I just talked about it, and I just find the concept very interesting. So what a free private city is basically taking all of the quote services that you get from a government and turning those into a private business, which is actually accountable. So in a sense, it's plugging in the Austrian school of thought into real life. Because there are services that governments do that of course we need. And that's part of the thing that's so tough, right? Is because on one hand, you have this organization that like puts fires out if building catches on fire, or like if there's some, I don't know, if somebody gets shot or something, I would hope that there's some sort of police or security that deals with that, or, stuff like that. A society like the roads, obviously, right? That's the biggest question that any libertarian gets is how are we going to build the roads? And all free private cities is saying is we can have all of these services in a much better way if they are done privately, because, the government has no accountability in the sense that if they do a bad job at one of these services that they're providing, they're still going to be in business, because their form of generating revenue is actually one of two things. So it's the first is taxation and the second is inflation. That's it. Versus a private company where the private company has to provide a legitimate service or product to people, which adds value to people's lives, and in exchange for the value that people are receiving, they're willing to pay for it. And if the business does a bad job, then they're not going to be in business. So That's what a free private city is. As far as how this can be done, the idea is also very interesting. So it's like, how do you do this, right? You have this idea, and that's great, but how are you actually going to plug it into the real world, and how are you going to like start this free private city thing where, right? The idea is to go to an existing nation state and have an area, like have a big piece of land in mind that's in their jurisdiction that's not being occupied, and say, hey, we want to make like a Hong Kong. That's basically what we want to do, right? We want to have, we want to let people do their thing. We want to leave people alone, right? Of course, if something bad is happening, right? Like if there's actual crime, or if somebody's hurting somebody else, we're going to have private security forces deal with that, which are accountable and keep people safe. But we want to just let businesses innovate and grow. And so anyways, long story short, they make the agreement with an existing nation state and say, we will give you a certain percentage of our revenue as a free private city, since we're a business, right? For-profit business, if you just let us do what we want. And so the idea is that the nation state has a financial incentive to permit freedom, you should say. So that's basically what a free private city is. One thing I would keep my eye on, I don't know if you've heard of Prospera at all, but this is like a real world place that's implementing this idea in Honduras. They've actually made a contract with the government of Honduras. I believe they get about 12 or 13% of the revenue from the free private city, something like that. Please don't quote me on the numbers because I could be off there, but it's really happening in the real world, and it's really cool to see that.
So basically, if I'm understanding this correctly, the corporations run the city. The government of the host nation is not responsible for any of the infrastructure. It's run by corporations. They're not responsible for the health or even defense and security of the private city citizens, residents. In return for the land allocation, the host government gets a certain percentage of the GDP. Yeah,
that's correct. I believe, the Honduran government is not even allowed to enter that area unless they are permitted.
Oh, so they actually have sovereignty then. Wow. Okay.
In that sense, here's the thing, right? To play devil's advocate, and this was one of my biggest questions coming into this idea of free private cities, is, okay, well, what happens if they just don't care about the contract that they made for the free private city? What happens if they just invade the area, right?
Yeah, well, there are financial incentive be to do that, though. Yeah, so you're looking at pure market forces there. Yeah, that's fascinating. Something I want to actually look into it some more, because something that we're noticing in the Bitcoin space, because we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and before I ramble on again, tell us a bit more, for those that didn't hear Andrew in our first podcast, tell us about Bitcoin Reserve, Andrew. Yeah,
I want to say one more thing about free private cities, just to, because I think it's worth mentioning. Companies can set up there also as well. There's like there's this e-license thing, something online where you can pretty much set up a business in like a day out of this free private city in Honduras. So, and again, it's called Prospera, Prospera. I thought it was kind of cool. And I know people that have done it. So anyways,
we'll link to it.
Yeah. Bitcoin Reserve. I am the Chief Business Development Officer, and basically I wear a bunch of hats. I write articles. I talk with awesome people like yourself, Bitcoiners around the world. And our goal is just to orange pill Europe and help people buy and sell Bitcoin in the easiest way possible in any amount. So, and we don't offer shit coins, and we force our clients to have self-custody. So yeah, that's what we do.
That's what we've been advocating for 2 years: buy Bitcoin only, dollar cost averaging, put it in the cold storage. So yeah, we, like you say, broken record, every episode is what we do is just, yeah, that's Bitcoin only, put it in the cold storage.
It's such an important thing. I mean, because it's a very convenient thing to just leave your coins on the exchange. But man, after seeing what's happening in Canada,
Yep.
I don't know where I heard this. I heard that. So I'm sure you saw those videos of these Canadian truckers being given Bitcoin, right? I heard that one of the Canadian truckers, he was not very tech savvy, like put his coins on an exchange for some reason, and he KYC'd himself, of course. And then the Canadian government seized his coins from the exchange because he was participating in the protest. So, yeah.
So
we
that's
have to take custody.
Yeah. So that's something that, yes, exchanges, if your Bitcoins are on exchange, then you can be in a position where you can't withdraw them because you are KYC'd. If they're in a wallet, then no, because 2 wallet providers responded to the Canadian government saying, frankly, because the Canadian government requested wallet providers to freeze wallets. The wallet provider said, well, even if we wanted to, we can't, and we don't want to. So, I mean, that was the biggest ad for getting your Bitcoins off exchanges was, what the Canadian government announced with their Emergencies Act and extending the AML rules there. So with that, I mean, central bank digital currencies is something that I thought is probably 10 years away. And it's something that we're now seeing is just coming out very, very quickly in a lot of countries. They're just saying, yep, here's what's happening, central bank digital currencies. And this is leading to another term we're coming across more regularly now, and something we're being asked about is digital sovereignty. So people are like, okay, I've got financial freedom with Bitcoin, but my identity is online. And if you think 10 years ago, someone came up to you and said, the government is going to give you a microchip, it's going to GPS you everywhere you go and record some conversations, people would be in uproar. That's no way that's going to happen. But the smartphone came out, and that's basically what we're doing. Everywhere we go, everything we look at, everyone we talk to is recorded, and it is metadata that is actually then sold to third parties. And we sign away these contracts without looking at them. So people are now going, okay, something is amiss, because for the first time in history, Facebook did not gain new users. For the first time ever, they actually lost users.
Interesting.
And we are coming across more and more people saying, okay, I want Bitcoin, but I also want digital scrubbing. I want a new online identity. I just want to know that who I am as an individual, as a person, is protected, and I'm in charge of my own data. Is that something you have considered? Is that something you've come across with the people you're dealing with?
Yeah. So it is absolutely something I've considered. Quick, creepy story about that is I was talking with somebody the other day, and my back was hurting from jujitsu, and I just mentioned, like, man, my back's really hurting. And probably about, I think 5 or 10 minutes later, they scrolled on their phone and saw an advertisement for chiropractors, which is kind of weird. And I've talked with people about that, and I know like a lot of people that have had the same thing happen. They'll talk about something, and then they check their phone and randomly see like an ad for that thing they're talking about. Super creepy. And I don't know, maybe it's just all in my head, right? But I don't think it's that crazy of a thing to say, right? I mean, these things like are trained to know our exact voices, and when we say, "Hey Siri," they're not just listening to "Hey Siri," they're listening to everything we're saying. Super creepy. So
just on
that's
that. Sorry, keep going.
No, yeah, definitely.
Because I heard one, these vacuum cleaners that just go around your house and vacuum by themselves. I don't want to name the name just in case. So I heard what they're actually doing is they're mapping your home, doing a two-dimensional blueprint of your home. That two-dimensional blueprint goes back to the organization who sold you the vacuum cleaner. They figure out what furniture you have in the home and where you have available spaces. They are selling the blueprint of your home to advertising agencies, you will then get an ad in your Instagram feed or wherever for an ottoman that would go perfectly in that spot where you have vacate.
Man,
so yeah,
that is weird. Yeah, data is the new oil, right? I mean,
Yep.
that's when you really start to think about like that phrase, data is the new oil. It's has a lot of implications.
So the reason I bring this up is twofold. One is I see this as the next part of, like, you're talking about free cities. That's great. I see a future there, but also what we're seeing is people coming up to us saying, I want to be a sovereign individual, which basically means, Bitcoin means I'm my own bank, but what about my data? Because my metadata is everything that I am. So how do I control? I can control my own finances with Bitcoin. How do I control my own data and who I am? So this is where I see us as a society, people going, okay, and it might just be 1 to 10% of society now, but that is going to be a big move away from big tech or third-party tech. And this is where Bitcoin started with decentralizing finance, and now it's like, okay, I've got autonomy of my finance. I want autonomy of my online identity. And this is where I see these free cities moving into as well. Part of that shift from big government and big tech.
Yeah. In that regard, another thing that comes to mind is, I don't know. Have you looked into like privacy phones at all?
Yes. So this is something me and Gordon are talking about. So we are actually launching a new service where we are helping people with their online privacy, setting up a private server, for example. So you are controlling your own data. You control what you share with the world, what people sees. And with your own phone, it's something that we're looking at as well, because they are out there, these private phones. The problem is the apps are not very user-friendly, not very sophisticated. But what we're talking about now would be like Bitcoin 2012.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause that's a service that, I asked because I've been looking into privacy phones, and there's like, Calyx OS and all these different options. But the price is like the same price as an iPhone. So it's really not that much more expensive. It's just the inconvenience of searching for what the best phone to have. And so I feel like if there was like a business that helped people out with that, I know a friend of mine, for anybody in the US, he's got a company called Above Agency, I believe, and he sells like privacy phones, and it's exactly what we described. But people need more of that. People need a business where they can just, it's as easy as buying an iPhone,
Oh, is it the conversation me and Gordon just had yesterday? Is I said, if I want to be a sovereign digital individual, as in I just want to be in control of everything that I do, and I can just buy a package. Here's your new computer, your new phone. You don't even need a new computer. Here's your new phone. Here's your Bitcoin node, your Bitcoin backup system, all of that stuff. Bang, select it. Here it comes. And I know my data, my finance is secure.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. That's really important.
When Gordon listens to this, I'll probably be getting 100 questions as to why do you ask him that? Why do you tell him that? Why do you ask this? Why do you bring this up? So for me, like I'm fascinated the fact that you started into Bitcoin. I love your journey because you didn't come at it from a tech point of view or a finance point of view. It was more from questioning society and foreign policy, especially looking at questioning that. So this is where my journey into Bitcoin, it wasn't from appreciating tech. It was from appreciating economics. So I think we're starting to see more and more people come into Bitcoin because they're not just interested in the tech, because it is over most people's heads, but they're interested in, okay, look, where are we as a society now? And we are at a fourth turning, beginning of a new 100-year cycle. And so Bitcoin will continue to grow because of that. But now we're saying, okay, what if I actually do want to be the master of my own health, master of my own data? This is something I think is a trend that's only going to continue to grow. So that's why I saw you. I was very keen to figure out, why are you leaving Mexico? And talking about free cities was really fascinating for me to come across, because I think you're at the tip of the spear here. I want to ask you this: are you worried that, okay, this is stuff that we are talking about? Are you worried that you're going to come under the radar of certain 3-letter agencies and you might become a person of interest?
I mean, the way I see it is I'm a totally peaceful person. I have no interest. I'm just a dude who wants to help other. I just want to do good things while I'm here in this life. Not a violent guy, not some sort of criminal. And I just speak my mind through this microphone over the internet to people like yourself. I certainly don't want to censor my language. And I know a lot of people that have a lot of money and they are living in prisons because they care more. They can't just say what they believe.
Mm.
And I don't ever want to be in that position ever. I can't, like, I literally cannot just, if I think something is the truth, if I think something is moral, I'm going to have to say it. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, like, getting on camera and saying taxation is theft and, like, the U.S. government is, all this stuff. Like, it's not the greatest, but
well, originally, income tax was only a temporary measure to support war efforts.
Yes, that's funny. That as well, you lived in the U.S., so that makes sense. But yeah, most Americans don't know that it was supposed to be a temporary income tax, and the way they did it too is actually still illegal. So I don't. I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but they always get us in this legalese, like this legal language. But yeah, I mean, income, like the word income does not mean what you think it means. The word wages, right, does not mean what Americans think it means. Like they get us operating in this system where we pay them money. But there's a guy I know for the last like 25 years, he's publicly not paid any taxes. He's publicly helped U.S. citizens not pay taxes because he has found that they have illegally instituted, the income tax, and the IRS has gone after him. He's been in court with the IRS and they dropped his case. They have not been able to convict him or anything like that because the man appears to be right. So his name's I think his name is Paimon Montedehe. He has Freedom Law School. If you look up Freedom Law School, this guy's a very interesting guy. So, but yeah, that's also a scam.
Well, I think someone said, and yeah, so two things. One is, just because you don't want to pay taxes does not mean you're a contributing member of society. You are a consumer. That is that's your contribution. But also, with someone mentioned, if the government just go ahead and print all this money and give it out, why are we still paying taxes with a COVID relief?
Yeah. And even that, there was this court case. I forget the name of the court case, dang it. But if you just look up, something along the lines of what I'm talking about, you'll find what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But basically, all of the tax money that the U.S. government collects goes off to pay the national debt. It doesn't go to infrastructure or anything that we think it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, and this is why I appreciate Bitcoin, because of its diminishing supply and the fact that the halvening, which as soon as I started reading that, I'm like, whoa, this is phenomenal. Because the best way I've heard of fiat currency described is you're paying sorry, how did they put it? You're paying a tax on the currency. It's designed to dilute, and that is your usefulness tax, because you're getting the cash for free from the government. A utility tax, you're paying a utility tax. And with a central bank digital currency, what they're saying is if we move to a cash-free society, to a central bank digital one, is you might say you receive $1,000 this fortnight in your wallet, your digital wallet. Well, over time, that's going to diminish, because you mentioned inflation before. So you're going to see inflation in goods and services, but then you're also going to see that, if you don't spend that by this fiscal year, we're going to take 10%. And they can do that in a digital wallet. They can't take 10% cash away from you. They can do it with inflation, but you might be looking at a potential double inflation, where if you're running off a central bank digital currency, if you don't spend this money, you'll have 10% less next year. Because this is how, unfortunately, economies work these days. It's just the hamster spinning the wheel. The wheel is creating more debt, and we're just going to keep spinning it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, as you and probably a lot of people listening know, they already do that in China. They set time limits to the amount of time that you can use the digital yuan. I don't know if in every case, I think in some cases, but they have done that in China. Yeah, it's really creepy to see where this stuff is going, because looking at this again, and I'm by no means any expert on this. If you really want to listen to an expert talk about central bank digital currencies, listen to Catherine Austin Fitts, because that woman really knows what's coming. But yeah, China, it just in scanning one QR code, like all your information is there, like your medical information, your criminal history, your family's criminal history, your social credit score.
Oh, this is life imitating art, because there was, a Black Mirror episode called Deep Dive where this is exactly what was happening.
I saw that one. I remember that. Yeah. It's just it's so weird. I mean,
and we've had 2 years of practice scanning QR codes, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, we certainly have. Yeah.
Look, Andrea, I know we've gone off beyond Bitcoin, but to me, like this show is just about Bitcoin basics, helping people buy Bitcoin. But every now and again, we do like to do these longer episodes. And I do really want people to appreciate that Bitcoin is not just a financial system. There's a lot more going on right now. It is an opt-out system. And when we say opt-out, it doesn't mean run away from America, run away from Australia, New Zealand. You can still be part of that culture, that country, that camaraderie. But there is an alternative to the debt-based system that we're living under. And what you guys are doing at Bitcoin Reserve and the Free Cities is, I think, just astounding work. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything I haven't asked you, or I should have asked you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Something that just popped in my head while you were saying all that is, as far as other topics outside of Bitcoin is, Bitcoin relates to every aspect of life in some way, because like money is touches all aspects in life, and all money is it's just I think I mentioned this last time on the show. It's a form of human energy. It's like stored human energy that you can transfer and hang on to and yeah, exactly. And Bitcoin is just a more moral monetary system. Like there's a reason Bitcoiners still hang on to this thing even after a 40% drop or whatever. Is because humanity has been stuck with this elite class of people that has access to the money printer and can buy whatever they want. And, so we're opting out. I mean, we don't want that to happen. We see that as immoral. We look at Bitcoin as more fair monetary system. So yeah, I think that's probably what I could end on in that regard. Like that would be probably my last point. Is it's a more moral monetary system. We're not in it just for the financial gains, although that's it's great because this thing that we're all really passionate about is highly likely to happen to make us wealthy as well.
When I was at university, I worked in sales as well. And part of my sales training, I remember to say, human beings want two things, freedom and security. And that's what money can buy, freedom and security. And that's what Bitcoin is. It's both.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It is. It's security because it gives you the ability to have more certainty for the future.
Yep.
And human beings can't do anything, can't do anything meaningful unless you have some sort of idea of what the future is going to be. So yeah, totally agree with that.
Look, Andrew, it's been a pleasure once again. And can we catch up with you when you're settled in the States?
100%. Yeah, that would be great. I'll give you an update. And
just where can people follow you? Where can they find you?
Yeah. So if you are a European and you want to buy some Bitcoin, go on bitcoinreserve.com. And my info is also on our website there. And Twitter is where I'm most active. So my handle is Andrew_J_Howard. And I'm happy to connect with anybody on there. So
cool. Oh, thank you very much, Andrew. It's been a pleasure once again.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Ferris. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Thanks for watching or listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share so we can spread this educational content to others like yourself. Visit bitcoinbasics.help.
Disclaimer. Any content provided by CoinCompass is for educational and informational purposes only and is not investment, legal, tax, or any other professional advice. A qualified professional should be consulted before making any financial decisions. CoinCompass will at times recommend certain products, services, and technologies, but these are opinions based upon our own or podcast guests' experience and not endorsements. We take no liability for out-of-date or inaccurate information, software bugs, manufacturing errors, technology misuse, or issues involving third parties. Visit coincompass.com for more information and please contact us.